Tonight, the Regina Folk Festival announces it's shutting down operations. A Regina woman with ALS says her health is improving thanks to a new breakthrough drug. And how this Saskatoon thrift store owner is saving clothes from ending up in the landfill.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Tuesday, March 11th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. I'm Ethan Williams. Thank you for joining us. The Regina Folk Festival is shutting down permanently after more than 50 years. It was put on pause last year due to financial constraints, but as Jeffrey Tram reports, it was never able to recover.
The Regina Folk Festival has come to an end. Organizers say there was not enough money, and operational challenges made it impossible to continue. The festival announced a hiatus in 2024, but promised to come back. Now, that won't happen. A statement from the festival reads in part, "When we announced the return of the festival this past November, we were optimistic and worked to meet our ambitious targets. However, by the end of January, it became clear that financial challenges and capacity limitations could not be overcome." Megan Nash has performed at the Folk Festival many times. She says she's devastated.
It's really a huge loss for our community.
Nash says the festival provided real opportunity for local artists.
Like, it's just something that you aspire to play one day as a local artist. And it's also a chance as an audience member to see international touring artists come to a smaller city like Regina.
One longtime volunteer says the loss of the festival will be felt for many summers moving forward.
There's going to be a void there definitely for a long time. There's going to be somebody that's going to come forward and say, hey, let's try a concert in the park again, and let's see if we can start to build that magic that was there.
Nash says she hopes the festival's closure is a wake-up call for everyone to better support local artists.
Please go to live music. Go support bands, go buy their merch, go to venues and experience music live. Nothing beats live music, nothing.
If you have purchased tickets already, organizers say you will get your money back. They say they have already started the refund process. Jeffrey Tram, CBC News, Regina.
The opposition NDP says some women in this province are not getting timely mammograms because they can't afford to. Right now, doctors are sending urgent cases to private clinics in Calgary due to long wait lists here, but not everyone can afford to travel out of province. And the NDP says women are having to make hard choices about their health.
These are women in urgent need of breast care, and we're seeing that some of them are having to go without that care due to financial barriers or ending up at a loss, and both going but ending up at a loss. Both situations are unacceptable.
The province reimburses up to $1,500 in travel expenses for patients who go to Alberta for the diagnostic tests. But Conway says she's hearing from some that their expenses exceed what the government pays. She says many are choosing to stay home. A Regina woman is celebrating Health Canada's approval of a new ALS drug. Paula Trafiak was one of the first ALS patients to take the drug as part of a clinical trial. And as Bonnie Allen reports, her experience shows why the drug is generating so much excitement.
Paula Trafiak didn't think she'd live to the age of 43, let alone still be wearing 3-inch heels or strapping on her ballet slippers. The Regina woman is living proof of why a new ALS drug is being called a breakthrough treatment.
I'm a ballet dancer. I couldn't even get up on my toes anymore, and now I can hold myself up with full body weight on one foot.
Trafiak was diagnosed with ALS in 2016. The neurodegenerative disease robs people of their ability to move, speak, chew, and eventually breathe. But unlike most ALS cases, hers is hereditary, caused by a gene mutation passed down through her family.
We have now had 26 people in our family die of ALS in my lifetime. So I have seen my father, my grandmother, many aunts, uncles, cousins all die of this disease in my lifetime. Currently, both myself and my sister are affected by this disease.
Trafiak's prognosis was bleak until she started taking a new drug as part of a clinical trial in Montreal, specifically for ALS patients with the gene mutation. At that time, she was already experiencing involuntary muscle twitching in her face, causing her to stutter and drool.
It was devastating. It was absolutely devastating. I had 3 young children, and to know that I was going to lose my ability to hug them, to kiss them.
It's a breakthrough that we can use to find therapies for patients with other forms of ALS.
The new drug called Qalsody actually modifies the disease. Dr. Angela Genge is the clinical trial lead.
It is able to stop the disease in its tracks on a significant number of patients, people living with ALS.
Health Canada has now granted conditional approval to Qalsody. More clinical trials are underway, and it's not yet covered by any public or private drug programs. The drug isn't a cure, but
My life has completely changed.
while Qalsody is for a small fraction of ALS patients, those with the ultra-rare gene variant, the drug is already inspiring more research to help people with other forms of ALS. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Swift Current.
Former students of a private Christian school in Saskatoon were back in court Tuesday to hear testimony from the man they say assaulted them. John Olabubokun is on trial, facing 9 counts of assault with a weapon. He's the former director of Christian Center Academy, which has since been renamed, first to Legacy Christian Academy, then to Valor Christian Academy. When the trial began last summer, former students testified the director disciplined them by hitting them with a paddle. Olabubokun testified in his own defense, denying he ever struck them.
We are here today this morning. Defense is up, presenting, their case. We've already done our job as the victims of this individual, and we did that last summer, and all of the brave alumni, former staff, and parents got on the stand and testified, so we're really happy that this day is finally getting here.
Erickson says she believes the justice system will do its job. The trial is scheduled to continue until Thursday. It was another day of on and off again tariff threats from Donald Trump. First came a vow of 50% duties on steel and aluminum Wednesday. Then indications that would be paused. Free trade talks are now planned in Washington between American officials, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, and Federal Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc. In exchange, Ontario Premier Doug Ford has suspended a 25% surcharge on electricity sold to the U.S. Ford called for cooler heads to prevail in the U.S. trade war against Canada. The Ontario Premier has also suggested the province could cut off the energy it supplies to the U.S. completely if tariffs escalated. Well, CBC News can't post on Facebook right now, but scammers are using deep fakes of our reporters to trick people. A University of Regina professor says these scams are getting more sophisticated and more serious. Liam O'Connor reports.
Have you scrolled Facebook or X and found CBC News ads promoting cryptocurrency? That's not actually us, even though it might be convincing. It's actually artificial intelligence or AI videos. Take this one as an example.
Important news. Justin Trudeau's project has alarmed the biggest banks.
It appears to be our CBC host, David Cochrane, throwing to a news conference of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. But it's not. Deepfakes digitally alter a video or person's face. Some of the first to adopt new technology like AI are fraudsters, using it to spread disinformation or revenge porn. While seemingly clunky right now, a Regina expert says the technology is improving fast.
As we saw with the large language models and generative language, it accelerates very quickly. So what is funny now is going to become almost indistinguishable within a year for sure.
Brian McQuinn says research shows most disinformation is shared without much thought. He's urging social media users to think more critically about what you're seeing.
That moment where you want to click and share is the moment where you need to pause. And over the next year or two, it's going to require us to do things that, as citizens, a level of analysis that we've just never had to do.
While there is a patchwork of legislation to deal with fraud and revenge porn, McQuinn says there's nothing targeting people who make these deepfake videos. McQuinn says federal legislation is needed, but with a potential upcoming election, Parliament being prorogued, and tariffs, he fears this issue has been put on the back burner.
There is a real need for us to deal with this, both from the perspective of privacy and protection of victims, but also just to be able to put pressure on the platforms, because in many cases there is none.
He says as the technology becomes more sophisticated, Canadians and our laws will have to keep up. Liam O'Connor, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Well, traffic was flowing along Regina's roads Tuesday morning, but the evening commute was a bit snowier than this. Looks like this is not the end of the white stuff either. I'll let you know about a couple of weather systems we are tracking when we come back. Stay with us. Canadian shoppers and travelers are avoiding the U.S. in big numbers. Statistics Canada is reporting a decline in travel south of the border. And while the low Canadian dollar might be a factor, many say their decision is about taking a stand against Donald Trump's trade war and sovereignty threats.
We're boycotting them for sure.
We're very cautious about where we spend our money and our funds.
With what's going on, we're being a little bit more conscious with our buying decisions. Obviously, we know why, because of the current situation with the U.S.
We have to stand up for Canada. You know, they're poking us in the eye, so we got to poke them back.
StatsCan says the number of Canadians crossing into the U.S. through land borders dropped by 23% year over year in February. That could indicate a big drop in cross-border shopping. The number of Canadians flying to the U.S. fell by only 2.5% last month, but air travel is usually booked far in advance and there are cancellation fees associated. So some travel experts are expecting to see a much bigger decline this month. A Saskatoon woman says too many clothes go to waste and pile up in the landfill. That's why she made a business out of thrift shopping in a big way. Helena Mahalik explains.
Everything's looking good in here.
These clothes were headed to the landfill.
Love me some college sweatshirts.
Rejected by most thrift shops. But a lot of effort goes into saving items that no one else wanted. So let's go back in time to see how it all starts. Lindsay Scarrow owns a vintage clothing store in Saskatoon. It's called Replacing You. To stock her shop, she used to go thrifting every day in Saskatoon. But she recently started bulk ordering clothes from a rag house in BC.
It's exciting in the sense that I have no clue what I'm going to get. Like, I'm not really getting Husky Athletics stuff when I'm ordering from BC. I like the aspect of it that's kind of like a mystery, like it's a surprise when I open the bulk orders.
Clothes that are rejected from thrift stores and would otherwise go to the landfill are sent to rag houses, ginormous warehouses covered floor to ceiling in clothes. Kelly Jimeno Hansen is the head picker at the Room Vintage, a rag house in Langley, BC. He digs through hundreds of thousands of pieces at his warehouse to find clothes for Scarrow.
So we buy bales of clothing, so that's like a 1,000-pound brick of clothing that gets shipped in on a trailer, and then we'll unload the trailer. The trailer will usually have like 60 bales on it, so that's around 60,000 pounds in total. That'll get unloaded, and then that'll kind of come into our inventory, and we'll go through that through the month. So an average month for us usually looks like we go through about 250,000 pounds of clothing.
So this time I wanted to focus more on sweatshirts and hoodies and women's tops.
Meanwhile, in Saskatoon, Scarrow does give some guidance. In February, she sat down and showed me what clothing pieces she's looking for this season to help the pickers narrow down their search. She sends over a new Pinterest board every month, with fashion trends she's hoping to tap into. The boards were filled with cool Y2K pieces. There were racer jackets, flared jeans, and vintage college sweatshirts. Once Scarrow receives her bulk orders, she launders every piece in bleach and soap to bring the pieces back to life before pricing and selling them. She loves fashion, but also trying to make a difference.
Because really anything that you could possibly want is already made. You just need to find it secondhand. It's just an easy way to create less waste. And the good thing about clothes is that, given that they're not completely wrecked, is once you get sick of something, you can sell it secondhand too. Like it's not just a new way to consume, it's a new way to get rid of things too, is making sure that your old things can find a new home.
And there is a lot of clothing already in the world. On an average month, the Rag House receives 250,000 pounds of clothing sent to them from thrift stores, clothing organizations, and charities across Canada. Clothes that don't sell from the warehouse get turned into rags for mechanics or cleaners who need the material. Last summer, the warehouse created rags to send to firefighters during the BC wildfires, so nothing goes to waste.
Just knowing that we can keep all these clothing from getting into a landfill or polluting the world is honestly just helps me sleep a little bit better at night. Just makes me feel like I'm doing my part more than just, recycling my bottles at home. It feels like I'm actually making a little bit of a difference if I'm keeping thousands of pounds out of a landfill.
Scarrow also feels like she's making a difference, making fashion more sustainable by making old clothing new and trendy again. Helena Mahalik, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Well, the snow has come and gone for many of us through the province, another round of it today. And you can still see the snow on the ground in Saskatoon there as we're looking at a temperature of around -3, still staying around seasonal for this time of year in the Bridge City. But further south in Regina, we got some snowfall through Tuesday. And if we take a look at satellite radar right now, we can actually still see that that radar loop showing snow along the eastern border of the province, though most of it has now moved out. And we're actually seeing the clouds start to clear a little bit further west near the Alberta border. Temperatures, as that system has been moving through, quite wide-ranging. We got to near double digits above freezing in southwestern Saskatchewan, but in the Parkland region, barely getting above the minus double digits through Tuesday. And as we zoom out a little further, you can still see very cold temperatures in far northern Saskatchewan. That is below seasonal for this time of year. And we're going to be dropping down into the -30s likely again for the north overnight as we head into early Wednesday morning, which means wind chills around -45 are possible. So extreme cold warnings are in place. That jet stream going to keep dropping south over these next few days here, so that cold air are going to sink southward with it. So south and central, we're going to get a taste of some colder weather as well, albeit not as quite as cold as the far north. But that jet stream, what we see kind of moving along that jet stream from time to time are storm systems, and that's exactly what's going to be happening over these next couple of days here. That system of snow going to be moving through the Churchill region overnight. That begins to move out. High pressure will clear out the north again as we head into Wednesday, making things cold. Still mostly cloudy for south and central and flurries for Wednesday. And then Thursday, that's when we start to see the first couple of weather systems move through. Some mixed precipitation for southern Saskatchewan. Mostly snow begins to move into Saskatoon and central Saskatchewan as we get into early Friday. Still a little bit of some mixing through Regina and the south before that changes over to snow as we get into Friday afternoon. The bulk of that snow going to be falling through kind of the Churchill region. So a few centimeters overnight as we get into Wednesday. These totals may be a little bit on the high side, but not ruling out some amounts maybe close to 20 centimeters or so, especially through the Churchill region of the province. For south and central, that same system maybe going to bring about 5 to 10 centimeters by the time we get to the supper hour on Friday. And with that, winds beginning to pick up a little bit, especially as we get into Thursday afternoon, maybe 40 gusting 50. So that snow could be blowing at times as it comes through as well. So until then, in Regina, again, we're still looking at mostly cloudy skies. Again, a bit of a breeze on Thursday. Our snow in Regina likely coming mostly overnight into Friday, upwards of maybe 5 centimeters. We get some colder temperatures on the other side of that system, and then closer to seasonal, albeit breezier, as we round out the weekend. Saskatoon, I think we're looking at snow, maybe wet snow at times as we get into Thursday and Friday. And again, seeing some morning flurries on Saturday before things clear out for Sunday, some breezier conditions, and then some cloud cover and possibly some flurries again as we hit around -5 as we get into Monday and Tuesday to start next week. That is Michael Bublé with Haven't Met You Yet. It's one of the songs that made it on the Apple playlist curated by King Charles. the only Canadian nod on the list. It was released to coincide with Commonwealth Day on Monday. The playlist includes many British artists and several from the Caribbean and a few from the U.S. as well. Names like Bob Marley and Diana Ross. Maybe you've heard of them. Stay with us. We'll be back after the break. U.S. and Ukrainian talks have kicked off in Saudi Arabia aimed at ending Russia's war against Ukraine. Meetings began just hours after Kyiv launched its biggest attack ever on Moscow. Hundreds of drones targeted 10 Russian regions, sparking fires, shutting down airports, and diverting flights. Russia says it shot down over 300. The attacks come after the Trump administration suspended military aid and intelligence to force Ukraine to negotiate a ceasefire. Meantime, Ukrainian officials say Russia launched more than 125 drones and a ballistic missile into the country. Here at home, this new development is bringing mixed emotions.
We're worried as well that if this is a false peace or an opportunity for Russia to take a pause and regroup and rebuild its military, there's that threat of being invaded again and even extending further. And I think as Canadians, in the last month or so, we've gained a little bit of understanding of what it feels like to have your sovereignty threatened. Not to that same degree, but we have a little bit of that understanding. So, of course, we want peace, but it must be a just peace that will ensure Ukraine's sovereignty and independence for always.
Well, a real mixed bag for overnight temperatures in Saskatchewan. Near freezing if you're in southwestern Saskatchewan, still closer to -10 up in east central areas. Some of us getting some clearing out further west, but maybe some evening flurries still closer to the Manitoba border. Look at this range of temperatures in northern Saskatchewan, near -15 in Cumberland House, still into the -30s if you're in Uranium City and Cree Lake. It's going to be feeling into the -40s overnight. A bit of a reprieve, though, once again, as we get through the day. Temperature-wise, we're looking at things getting kind of into that -20 range if you're in the far north, maybe even above -10 if you're in the Churchill region as things start to clear out. For south and central, though, we're still looking at a mostly cloudy day. Flurries not to be ruled out, though, for most areas. And again, temperatures kind of hovering in that freezing to -5 mark for most. Again, except for southwestern Saskatchewan, we're seeing those temperatures jump into those high single digits and maybe even into double-digit territory above the freezing mark. And that is it for us. For more news anytime, you can head to cbc.ca/sask or subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel. You can also download the CBC News app on your smartphone or tablet. Thanks for watching.